be so kind, let me know in the chat room if you can hear the sound of my voice. We are also launching on YouTube, so you can see our guest in all her finery. And when we hear me echoing, we know be so that kind. I'm out. Let me know there in the chat room if you can hear the sound of my voice. Okay, we should be live on the YouTubes. And hubby is in the chat room. We've got another person waiting. Maybe we'll give it just another minute, or we could just start right away. I don't know. What do you think?
I just took a listen, and we are live.
Okay. Do we want to just get right in there?
Yeah, I see some people coming in. Let's get to it.
Okay. Good evening, and welcome to the beautiful historical Marionette Theater. Tonight, we're going to be discussing an early 2000s romantic comedy, a little bit of coming out stories, and a whole lot of friends supporting each other through life's interesting moments. Please take your seats. The show is about to begin. Well, Toppy, it is a fine evening here in the old town tonight, and I don't think that we should hold back any longer. I'm just going to introduce tonight's guest.
Go for it.
Golly, it's Amanda Toppy. It's so nice to have her back here in our town. You're looking well, golly. You can tell, Dolly, you're still glowing, you're still sewing, you're still going strong.
Oh, and of course, I am speaking of none other than the Mid-Atlantic cosplay drag maven of mystery, Miss Amanda Martini.
Hello. Hi, everyone. I am so happy to be back for my, we decided seventh time?
Seventh time.
Wow.
Oh, bird.
It's like that spin the bottle game, 7 in heaven.
7 minutes in heaven. Oh my.
Oh my. Well, before we're 7 minutes in, Amanda, would you take center stage there so we can let our listeners know about what we're discussing tonight?
Sure. Dennis is a free-spirited photographer. He shares his house with a handsome himbo, Cole, in the suburbs of Los Angeles. The two are part of a circle of out-gay men, each with their own troubles, and each helping out at their older friend Jack's restaurant. Together, they help each other struggle through the complexities of love as gay men in the newly arrived 21st century. Grab a slice of cake and your camera. It's time for the Broken Hearts Club. Take it away, fellas.
What do you get when you take a dash of the silver screen? A pinch of golden oldies, and a smidgen of screaming. It's time for Matinee Minutia with your host, DJ and Toppy.
Well, good evening, Mr. Smelly. It finally cooled off on the surface of the sun, and what a perfect night to have our dear friend Amanda here with us tonight.
Certainly is. It's lovely.
So tonight's film is an early 2000s romantic comedy, and I thought that we would go ahead and play the trailer from this film to give you an idea about it.
Yeah.
Welcome to West Hollywood, California, the San Francisco of Los Angeles.
There's not a single film in the cinema canon that paints a portrait of a gay man that any of us would aspire to be. Can you imagine if they made a film about us, our group of friends?
I know they're my friends. I just don't know if I can trust any of them, especially when it comes to men. You must be Ennis.
That's Dennis. Somebody ate the D. Clearly, without them, my life would be a lot less fun, but with them, I don't know if I'll ever be able to have a life of my own. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Do you want to keep it short on top?
Sony Pictures Classics invite you to join Cole.
He's gorgeous, completely straight acting. What are the chances of me getting your number? What are the chances of you hitting a home run? Right, neatly.
I want to be Cole. Why can't I be Cole?
Howie.
Dumb, gorgeous people should not be allowed to use literature when competing in the pickup pool. It's like bald people wearing hats.
The newbie.
My mom mentioned that she made key lime pie. So that's great. I love key lime pie, and I'm gay.
I bet she wishes she made apple pie.
Patrick.
Leslie and I want to have a baby, and since that's biologically impossible for us to do so, and since your genes are so close to my own, we thought that we could borrow some of yours.
Look, are you prepared to answer the question, Mom number one, why is Mom number two's brother my father? I mean, look at the three of us. What kind of Christmas card is this going to make?
Dennis.
I'm 28 years old, and the only thing I'm good at is being gay. It's not true. It is true.
And Jack.
Happy birthday, Dennis. Don't get nervous. Little kids and senior citizens don't say it for you to say it back. I just wish it was, you know? That easy to let someone in.
To be beautiful. To get a boyfriend.
The Broken Hearts Club, a romantic comedy.
Amen, girlfriend.
Angie, there isn't a straight man in America who doesn't refer to anyone but his girlfriend as girlfriend.
I know, but I was so butch when I said it.
Oh, now I know my Mr. Smelly can't believe it. We were talking behind the curtain, and this film came out 20 some years ago.
22 years ago.
I was in college when this movie came out.
Oh my God, DJ, what was going on in your life when this came out?
Well, I I had a mini crisis of identity, of faith. I was just surviving my second state after leaving home, and about to move to my third state within 2 years. So that's about where I was at that time. I was in Colorado, and as I was saying earlier, I didn't have the kind of friends that you went to the movies with to have seen this. I probably saw it maybe a couple of years later when Logo was still showing gay programming.
Yeah, let's see. This was after I broke up with my 13-year ex, and was really kind of in the dating scene for really the first time in my life at the age of, like, I don't know what I was, 37, 38. And so that's what I remember. And I'm trying like the hell to think of who I saw this movie with. And I think it was someone I was dating at the time. But that's what I remember.
I was not out yet.
Wow. Was there ever really a time you weren't out?
I mean, to be honest, no. But like I had not like come out yet. And I was renting this movie as well as some other movies I'm sure we'll talk about when we talk about, recommendations. Other movies from my local video store in Logan, Utah, where I went to college. And I think I was the only person who was renting these movies because they were always available. And eventually I bought them. So my copy of Broken Hearts Club, the DVD, has Hastings, like the sticker still on it. But yeah, so like I wasn't even out yet. This movie is one of the movies that like this was, quote, my generation of like queer cinema that like helped me then like come out.
So let's be honest, Amanda. Did you bake your own key lime pie?
I mean, if I could bake pie, I can do cake, I can do cookies. I'm not very good at pie, but honestly, so I probably came out like 2 years after this movie was out. I came out like 2002. But no, it was not a key lime pie. It was much more intense than that. But This movie, again, I watched it, this week, preparing for this, and it just brought back such nostalgia of like that time. And again, and like in the movie when they talk about like, when someone's like newly out and everything's like wonderful, and then it's like, oh, and then you become us, the bitter jaded queens. And anyway, it was I though the movie, again, to be honest, the movie is not great. It's not groundbreaking by really any means, aside from the fact that it was a queer movie, in 2000. It definitely has like really, really strong nostalgia for me and like and like my group of friends.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it definitely gave you a feeling of normalcy. It's like these are everyday people, and it's nice to see characters like that in a story, because a lot of films you watch, you're like, you're trying to figure out if you relate with the characters.
Right.
So, Demanda, this is our second film in the month of June, Pride Month. If you would be so kind, could you read this little snippet here we put together about history of diversity in gay pride?
Sure. So, interracial marriage was not legal in the US until 1967, Loving versus Virginia, almost a century after the end of the US Civil War. It wasn't until 1973 before the American Psychiatric Association removed homosexuality as a mental illness. 4 years after the riot at New York City's Stonewall Inn, a series of spontaneous protests by members of the gay community in response to a police raid that began the early morning hours of June 28, 1969, at the Stonewall Inn in Greenwich Village. Patrons of Stonewall, other village lesbian and gay bars, and neighborhood street people fought back when the police became violent. It wasn't until 2000 that the Netherlands became the first country to legalize same-sex marriage. In 2003, Belgium became the second country. Massachusetts became the first US state to legalize in 2004. Many states would follow, but it wasn't until 2014 before marriage equality would be nationalized.
And I am proud to say that New York and Maryland were both ahead of that.
Yes.
Wow.
And surprisingly, Utah.
And Iowa, for goodness sake.
I know.
So,
yes, indeed.
Toppy, there are some folks that came and went in 2000 when this film came out. Tell us about some people. Now, this is special because this is just today. Here today, June 17th, there was a time in this world when two very famous people joined us. Toppy, tell us more.
Well, I'm wondering what part of the script you're looking at.
Celebrity births.
Okay. But certainly Barry Manilow wasn't born in 2000.
No, but he was born on this day, June 17th.
Oh, I get it now. By the way, Barry Manilow couldn't be more appropriate for this movie or Pride in general, because way back when he was a youngster, what was he doing besides making jingles for radio and television? Well, he was in gay bathhouses playing for Bette Midler.
Right.
Playing the music for Bette Midler. So how about that?
Yeah, he and Bette Midler playing in bathhouses. Again, could you imagine? That always just strikes me as so crazy that they used to do that. But
yeah,
work. I love it.
Yeah, only in New York City. Jodie Whittaker was born on this day. You know her from Broadchurch and Doctor Who.
She's the 13th Doctor.
Amazing. And we had some deaths. Walter Matthau from The Odd Couple. He was passed away at 80 years old. Steve Allen, classic TV comic and talk show host, passed away at 79 years old. Jason Robards, we did a little movie of his called Max Dugan Returns. He passed away at 78.
And there's a terrific, very rarely seen film for the holidays called The House Without a Christmas Tree that starred Mr. Jason Robards as well.
Yeah.
So, well, one thing we like to talk about to put things into perspective of the film we're discussing is the year at the box office. So in 2000, now the film tonight, Broken Hearts Club, a romantic comedy, it was sort of an independent release. It was distributed by Sony, but it made its premiere in January of that year at the Sundance Film Festival. Now, I can happily tell you that some of the first um, mainstream, if you will, independent movies that I had seen as a youth were courtesy of the Sundance Channel and, of course, Mr. Robert Redford, who brought us that show or that station. Of course, one of those was one in a series of films called Boy's Life, which was a series of coming out stories. So, all right. So the top of the box office in 2000, the number one at theaters brought in 251 million. The guy in the green suit, Mr. Jim Carrey, is the How the Grinch Stole Christmas. And then number two at the box office, he was famous for dancing in his underwear in his younger years with sunglasses, and then he also piloted a Air Force jet. Mission Impossible 2 brought in 215 million. Now, running up the trio at the box office top was Mr. Russell Crowe in his muscular finery, and brought in 186 million with Gladiator. Now, as I was saying, Broken Hearts Club was an independent film. And just to put things into perspective, others that might have been around the place where it might have placed, because we like the underdog. Somewhere around the middle was Battlefield Earth.
Ugh.
Speaking of Utah, Amanda.
Oh my God.
Mr. John Travolta was in this sci-fi film, brought in 21.47. The 47 is important because you know that $1,000 is what separates it from the next rung. But I think that's one of those possibly latter-day Mormon sci-fi author.
No, that was Scientology.
Okay, very.
I mean, just as crazy. But
it's still a tinfoil hat, but, maybe with a flower. I don't know. And then just below Battlefield Earth, bringing in 21.46 million. Mr. Joey Lawrence from Blossom. Whoa! Urban Legends final cut, and that final cut part is important because it was one in a series, apparently.
Yeah. So I was gonna say that one was either like the second or the third, because Joey Lawrence wasn't in the first one, and so I mean it was one of the after Scream sort of became a phenomenon. I remember Urban Legends came out, and it just was not as good, and like the fact that it just had so many sequels after it, I was like, really? Okay.
Well, with the title Final Cut, I would hope it's a promise there won't be any more.
So also when you said Gladiator, I feel as though we do the movie disrespect if we don't announce it as Elizabeth Taylor did when it won the Golden Globe and go, Gladiator!
Now, was this before or after she gave a certain jewel-encrusted undergarment to a gentleman caller?
So it's on YouTube. You could look it up. Again, this has nothing to do with what we're talking about now. But if you look up her announcing the Golden Globes, because the Golden Globes, as we all know, people are like super drunk. It's just like a big dinner party, and she was drunk because it was one of the last awards, and she almost read the winner at the beginning because she's like I don't usually do this, I just win these. And like Dick Clark had to run out and like take her by the arm and go, oh no, that's for, she's like, oh, it's for later. And now the winner, Gladiator.
Then later they didn't realize her mic was still hot, and she says, "Is this thing filled with chocolate?"
Yes, she said that too. Oh my goodness. She's an incredible icon.
So we have you under the hot lights there, Madame. We have a question for you. Toppy, take it away with the first round.
Well, we were wondering, Amanda, what makes this movie, Broken Hearts Club, one of your favorite gay films?
So I kind of was like hinting at it earlier, but like this movie was, so I was still in the closet in college in Utah, and I was kind of living on my own. Like I lived with roommates, one of whom was a cousin of mine, and so like still had like family like around and stuff. And so I was like slowly like, oh well, I'm gonna go rent this gay movie and watch it when no one else is home. And then I would get braver and be like, oh well, this is just a romantic comedy that I'm watching. And so like I would rent this movie and Trick and Edge of 17 and Get Real, and again a bunch of other movies that kind of came around. There was like that like peak of like queer cinema. I shouldn't say queer cinema. I would be like white gay male cinema in like those early 2000s. And like it was just one of those movies that like it had so many good quotes. I think another reason that like I found it a little bit relatable is that in the movie they talk a lot about, oh well, who would you be in this movie? Like they do a lot of like casting their friends in the movies, and that was something that me and my friends do all the time. And so it was just it was very relatable in that sense. Also Timothy Olyphant I always found super hot, so like that was always the thing. And then, you know, before Dean Cain went off and went like super crazy politically, I mean, he is of course still like my Superman. So of course I was into that as well. Seeing him make out with Andrew Keegan from was he on Seventh Heaven or another one of those like early WB shows? Anyway, it was like hot guys. Everybody's gay, which was wonderful. And like it was just like one of those like formative movies. Like, you know, there's just like those certain movies that you watch. I mean, the first movie that we did together on this podcast was Clueless, which was another movie that came out at like that very formative time for me in middle school, that like really like formed the way that I talk, the way that I interact with people. Like this movie to this day, I still have a friend that I swear to God we'll be sitting down and we'll just go, meanwhile, when, you know, when a hot guy walks by, a very good friend of mine who is straight, unfortunately, he has always said that he wants to a punk band and name them the Ultimate Meanwhiles, and their first album be called With No Souls, which is what they call Cole in this movie. For those of you who haven't seen the movie, Meanwhile is, you know, when you're sitting with your friends and you're talking and like a hot person walks by and you want to get their attention without alerting the hot person that they're trying to get your attention. So if you just go meanwhile, so my friends, we've now adapted it from meanwhile to be what's this? And just sort of like casually like kind of put a gesture in that direction, like not like point, but like a gesture, be like, oh, what's this? So that way everyone's like, oh, what is that over there? I don't know what that is. And it just sort of, you know, especially when you're at a convention, what's this? What's this over here? Anyway, I love it. It's not a great movie. Even like listening to that trailer, like it's weird that they don't allow like Taylor, why Billy Porter's character, like they don't really give him any sort of like like anything. He is definitely like relegated to like super side character. He and Nia Long, who play Patrick's sister's girlfriend or wife or partner or whatever, they're the only two people of color in that movie. And they're definitely like relegated to the sides. They also like they use the F slur a lot, which has always been like kind of a triggering word for me. It's not. I'm not. It's not a word that like I have ever like reclaimed and used, and it's just I didn't like that. It especially because like I would say again, I don't know all of them personally, but like 89% of the cast in that movie is heterosexual, and like again having these like straight men use that word because they're playing gay was very is still kind of like very jarring. Like literally, like aside from Billy Porter, actually, I don't think any of I take it back. I think the actor who plays Howie, I don't know him. I don't think he's really been in a lot of other things. But yeah, I think everybody else in that movie is super straight. So like again, having them use that word was just kind of like no thanks.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it's a movie that takes place in you know, West Hollywood, and there's no Latin characters at all.
Right.
So what's that about? Anyways.
Well, and the thing, I mean, it just goes to show you like how far we've come. Like even, you know, around the same time Queer as Folk started on Showtime. And so like almost all of them, actually all of them were white. Again, I'm trying to like remember if I even saw a person of color in that show. And so it just, and now, you know, there's the new reboot that's coming out, and it's like there's not a white character that I can like name, which is great. That's wonderful. It just shows you like how far we've come in like the little baby steps of representation that like we needed to take in order to get where we are. And I mean, I know that, you know, we always say, oh, they could have done better back then. And it's kind of like, well, they were doing the best they could at the time. And you know, it's now 20 years ago, and we're doing better, still have more places to go. But yeah.
Right. I mean, we have a trans actor who's going to be in the new season of Doctor Who.
Right.
So, Toppy, we have a boatload of people who came together to make this film. And of course, as we are a celebrated venue of many things, including former magic acts, the magician of the film is the director in this point of view. Tell us a little about the director who made the Broken Hearts Club.
Well, he's Greg Berlanti, and he was born and raised in New York. And he says this movie's a bit autobiographical in that he based it on what his group of friends were like at one time. But Berlanti is a writer, he's a director, and he's been involved in television series you might know, including ABC's Brothers and Sisters. That was with Eli Stone, and he was nominated for a WGA award for that. And also he was involved in Political Animals, which was a USA Network miniseries, which was also nominated for a WGA, DGA, and Golden Globe Award. And also everybody's favorite Dawson Creek, he was in on that as a writer and executive producer. And then he went on to create and executive produce 2 years of Warner Brothers' most critically acclaimed dramas, Everwood and Jack and Bobby. So he's been around and been doing a lot of things, but he did begin his career in television as a staff writer on Dawson's Creek. And he became, and only like a year later, he became the showrunner. And since then, Berlanti's, he's been a creator, writer, and producer behind several of the things I've just mentioned, not to mention Arrow, Blind Spot, The Flash, Supergirl, You, Riverdale. He loves the comic books, doesn't he? Titans, Doom Patrol, All American, and The Flight Attendant. So for the past few years, Berlanti Productions has had as many as 15 shows on the air at one time. That's kind of a record breaker right there for a TV producer and creator. His film directorial debut was The Broken Hearts Club. And his most recent feature is something he directed and very critically acclaimed. It was a movie called Love, Simon. And upcoming feature projects that he's going to be doing that you're going to be seeing a lot about is Amazon's My Policeman. That's going to be starring Harry Styles and Emma Corrin. Also, Alice and Frida. That involves Jennifer Kent. Something called Forever. That's going to be Rock Hudson biopic. And he's going to direct that. Red, White, and Royal Blue, Be More Chill, and HBO's Max's Moonshot. So he's gotten some big, his companies has gotten some big deals with streaming services like Netflix. So we're still going to see a whole lot from him.
Okay, well, we are at about the halfway mark in our show. So we're going to step on over here to the snack bar, and well, Miss Gertie has taken the night off, so it's open bar. Yay! Okay, so for your enjoyment, we have an interview with Entertainment Weekly with the director of this evening's film, Mr. Greg Berlanti.
My sister at the time was also realizing that she was going to get a divorce. So we were sort of arguing about what was the best timing to tell our parents that like she was going to get a divorce and that I was gay. My name's Greg Berlanti and I'm a gay man. I realized I was gay from the time I was probably around 13 years old. Didn't really deal with it. Had a closeted relationship in college and still kind of tried to convince myself maybe it's just the person, maybe I'm not gay. And then I moved out to Los Angeles in 1995 and I made some friends, started seeing someone. Everything made sense for the first time. And after a lot of tears and just realization and journaling about it, I realized, okay, I want to start telling people openly that I'm gay. And I told a few friends and then told my sister, but I was waiting to tell my parents. I just kept not getting an opportunity. So it was almost probably a year and a half after I started telling people, I realized like, okay, now I've really got to tell them. What if they hear from somebody? As it worked out, the only time I was really going to get a chance to tell my parents was my dad was taking a business trip to San Francisco, of all places. So I flew up there and I was really nervous and I went out to dinner with them and I couldn't tell them at the dinner. I just didn't have the wherewithal. I was probably 24 now at this point. And so I sort of sweat through dinner and they could tell. They asked me if something was wrong and we went back. They didn't get me like my own hotel room or anything. It was like three of us in one room and me on a cot and in the hotel room. And it was the night of the Olympics when Muhammad Ali lit the torch. And I had actually in my lifetime met Muhammad Ali. And you felt like you were meeting a spiritual or religious figure. He had such presence and really inspired courage. And so he lit the torch and I turned off the television set. And I said, well, I want to tell you guys, and for a long time I've known I'm gay. And, you know, I just had one long run-on sentence. And it wasn't great. It didn't go super well at the time. I think they were both really shocked and surprised. And so they went back to New Jersey where they lived at the time. And I went back to LA. For the first couple of months, things were really raw. We didn't talk as much as we'd always talked every week. And I finally wrote them a letter that said, look, yeah, I'm gay, but I'm also all these other things that you've already known, and my father got the letter and he called me and I could hear that he was, really moved by it. And then that was it. And a lot of members of my mom's community, people who knew someone who was gay or had gay children, a lot of those people through the years would find her and talk to her about it. And she definitely helped a lot of friends, I think, in terms of just saying like, your son's still, your daughter, whomever is still the same person, I'd written a number of scripts when I came to Hollywood. 8 or 9 of them and passed them around to friends, and nobody ever really called me about them or passed them on to anybody. And then I had saved up enough money to write sort of one more script. And I ended up writing this thing that became the film The Broken Hearts Club. And it was just about a group of young gay guys. I'd always loved the film Diner, and it really was sort of my ode to those kind of movies, as coming of age stories, but about what it meant to be gay in the late 90s in West Hollywood. And my parents threw a premiere party at a gay bar in New York. And that was really finally when I felt like, okay, now we've gone on this whole sort of journey together. They had sort of their coming out process with it all too, and that not only were they accepting of me being gay, but they wouldn't have changed it.
Alrighty, so continuing on, we have another question for our guest of honor. I'm going to rephrase it a little bit because, Demanda, you already mentioned that you saw this film while you were in college, and you said you rented it. So I'm curious to know, when you rented this film, did you watch it by yourself? And after you watched it, did you share this movie with other friends maybe that hadn't seen it?
So I would the first time I rented it, it was like, in between, like I would rent like 4 movies, and like it would be like in the middle. So like it was like, oh, I'm getting a whole bunch of things. And so I would wait to watch it by myself, because I, number one, didn't think that my roommates would want to watch it, and also like it was not something that I kind of wanted them. I wanted them to watch with me, especially like the first time. Eventually, when I would rent it again, or like when I finally like just bought it and just started watching it a lot, I would just sort of like, when like you're home and your roommates, and like they'll come in and be like, oh, hey, what are you watching? Like usually I would wait until like it was a whole day by myself, like I knew nobody would be home. But then I would start watching it. It's like, oh, I'm watching this movie. If you would like to watch it, you can watch it with me. Sometimes they would, sometimes they wouldn't. I did eventually watch it with one of my very good friends who I mentioned earlier. His name's Brian. My token straight friend. And he liked it. He supported the fact that like this is a movie that I liked, and he thought it was funny. Again, as I said, he wanted to always name a band The Ultimate Meanwhiles. And I mean, eventually, as I got older, this was a movie that like I would ask people if they had seen. So like when I met like new gay friends, I'd be like, oh, have you seen Broken Hearts Club? Because I would always like, quote it, much like, I quote Steel Magnolias all the time. And so I'm like, oh, and they're like, oh, that's so funny. I'm like, have you never seen Steel Magnolias? Like, what do you, like, have you not heard that before? So, another one of my very good friends named Logan, he lives in Atlanta now. He was when he and I first met and were becoming friends, he was like, I've never been able to like sort of create my own Broken Hearts Club. So that was a movie that like we bonded over, which is funny. It's a movie that we bonded over, but we'd never watched together until like maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I went to Atlanta. We were trying to decide on a movie, and we decided to watch this. We had never watched it together, but we talked about it all the time. But a movie that he introduced to me, which was like my second choice for today, if we didn't do Bernard School, which is The Boys in the Band.
Mm-hmm.
And so like he introduced that movie to me, and so like the two together kind of like really solidified like our friendship. But again, it's a movie like when I told a bunch of people that I was doing this podcast, they were like, oh yeah, I love Broken Hearts Club. When I posted about it on like my Twitter and Instagram, lots of people were like, oh yeah, I remember that movie. What a shame about Dean Cain. But yeah, no, it's still a movie that I watch frequently. I do love it a lot.
So we've talked about the director of the film. We're going to touch a point on some of the members of the cast, the pretty faces behind the characters. And the first one we're going to mention, played Dennis, who's the photographer, the guy who owns the house that everyone seems to be getting together at. Mr. Timothy Oliphant. Now, I will be the first one to say, Amanda, didn't he remind you a little bit of Josh Jamel?
So yes, but also in the picture that Toppy is currently using, he also looks a little bit like from this distance, like Henry Cavill.
Oh, okay.
Like a little bit of that. But yeah, I think the three of them have that sort of similar vibe to me.
So Mr. Timothy Oliphant was born in Hawaii, raised in and then raised in Modesto, California. So there was a move there somewhere in between. Before he became an actor, he explored work as a stand-up comic.
I don't see that for him, which is so strange.
His first screen role was a brief supporting role in The First Wives Club. I remember that. He was like on screen for 2 minutes, but he was
the young director who wanted her to play Monique's mom.
Exactly. It was Goldie Hawn's floozy fill-ins, basic agent kind of. Anyways, he adult film director. He was in The First Wives Club in 96. Of course, for those of you who don't know, First Wives Club, you should have your gay card taken away. Bette Midler, Diane Keaton, Goldie Hawn. And The Broken Hearts Club was Mr. Oliphant's 8th film. Now, just prior, he was in, of all things, Advice from a Caterpillar in 99 with Andy Dick. Oh, and that was about a woman that falls in love with her gay friend's boyfriend. And Mr. Oliphant would star in 9 more films over the next 5 years, including a supporting role as a detective in Gone in 60 Seconds, one of few Nick Cage movies that I enjoy, with Angelina Jolie. And then he was also in Head Over Heels in 2001 with Freddie Prinze Jr., who of course was later in some of the Scooby-Doo movies that were made. As
also, like you're not gonna mention Scream 2, which was like for me like the next thing that I remember him in. So good.
I don't know. I'm all about the ascot. And in Head Over Heels, that was about a young woman who's attracted to a man despite her thinking she's seen him kill someone. I mean, if he's hot.
Yeah, listen, there's many things one can forgive.
Most recently, he had a series of guest appearances on FX's Fargo, which includes Angelina Jolie's ex-husband, Billy Bob Thornton. And that was in 2020. Mr. Oliphant has done voice acting for Fox's The Great North animated series, which I enjoy. And
most recently, he had a big guest star role on The Mandalorian.
Ooh. And to date, Mr. Oliphant has 74 acting credits now, Miss Thing. We were talking about our superhero who maybe turned right.
Turned it very hard right. So Dean Cain, he plays Cole, the big himbo of the group. So he was born in Michigan, grew up in Hawaii, and attended high school in Santa Monica, California. He attended and played football at Princeton, where he was a history major. He dated Brooke Shields. I remember that in I think it was like Brooke Shields is like VH1 whatever, like mini or E-entertainment thing. Yeah, he dated Brooke Shields while they were like in college or whatever. His earliest TV acting roles were guest appearances on 90210. Oh, I remember this. Broken Hearts Club was his 7th film, 3 years after his 4-season run on ABC's Lois and Clark. Listen, if you do not know Lois and Clark, like the early seasons, I think were really good. Then like it took this crazy turn, and it was such camp magnificence. But Dean Cain is like I think he's the reason that I find like tall guys with dark hair like extremely hot. Like that whole Superman. Anyway, Cain's first film after that was Best Men in 97 with Andy Dick. Andy Dick was all over the place in the 90s. And Drew Barrymore, I don't even remember that movie. Four best men pick up their friend, the groom, outside prison. On their way to the chapel, they stop by a bank and get involved in a robbery. What? The bank's surrounded, the FBI takes over. What? I've literally never heard of that movie. I'm gonna Google it later, see where I'm gonna have to watch that. Kane would later appear in 12 films over the next 5 years, including Fire Trap in 2001 with Lori Petty. An ex-con steals an advanced computer chip during an office building fire, and Rat Race. So a lot of people tell me, so that had Whoopi Goldberg, Cuba Gooding Jr., the guy who played Mr. Bean. That's another movie that a lot of people talk about being like one of their favorite movies of the 2000s. I've never watched it. Is this something that I should watch? A Las Vegas casino magnate determined to find a new avenue for wagering sets up a race for money. To date, Dean Cain has 193 acting credits. He has also become super political and he's been very flip-floppy, especially since we're talking about Broken Hearts Club and queer people and all that stuff. He's been very flip-floppy about supporting LGBTQ issues. And previously he's been like, yes, of course I support gay people. I was in this movie in 2000, but like recently he's been not supportive. Again, I don't want to misquote him. But anyway, he's sort of lost that luster for me, but I will always remember him as my Clark Kent.
Nice. And Amanda, do you have a favorite character in the movie?
So my favorite character in the movie, because in our group of friends, people always tell me that I'm Taylor without the fact that I have never been in a long-term relationship. but I'm the one who's always going to give everybody advice and like tell everybody like when Taylor redoes Dennis's house and Dennis is like, where's all my furniture? It is spread evenly throughout the house, distributed evenly. But Taylor's my favorite. Again, that like Taylor's first big scene is when Taylor finds out that he's been dumped for a hyphen, for an exclamation, for punctuation mark. When he's like, no Judy, no bet, and then he's like, the beach, Celine Dion in hell. Oh, Beaches soundtrack, track 4. Like it's just like perfect, and honestly, very, very.
Oh, it was probably The Wind Beneath My Wings, also.
Actually, no. I think it's gonna rain today. I think it's actually the track listed, because obviously I've looked that up.
That was my gateway drug. Mom and Dad had music CDs, and I remember playing the Beaches soundtrack.
Yes. Beaches so is so good.
That was Billy Porter's character, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Billy Porter.
Well, I just wanted to say that the first time I ever heard about Billy Porter was he started making news because of his fashion choices at several award ceremony or what have you.
You mean in like the last 5 years?
Yeah. Anyways, before that, I didn't know who he was. I had no clue. And so when I watched this movie for the second time, I couldn't believe it. My God, Billy Porter's in this. And I didn't know his career went that far back. I thought he was someone totally new.
So Billy Porter's like big thing that made him famous was he won the Tony for being the teen angel in the revival of Grease, the one that had Rosie O'Donnell in it as Rizzo. He played teen angel, and I think like the whole thing is that he took the song up like 2 or 3 steps, and then did like this whole like gospel thing at the end of the song, and it was a whole and Teen Angel is a one and done number. Like there's nothing else. So it was like a show-stopping number, and he won the Tony for that. So that's what like made him famous. So then he started like appearing in random things in the 90s. This is I think maybe his first movie. But anyway, so this movie is what introduced me to Billy Porter. And then I remember then when YouTube became a thing, I remember seeing him on the Rosie O'Donnell show for Grease, because that was around the or at least he was on there because maybe he was in something else, but he had already won the Tony, because I mean that production of Grease was like 93, 95 maybe.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah, he's been and the more recently he was on Pose, which is why he was at all of these fashion, all of his fashion stuff, because he was on Pose. Anyway, I love Billy Porter. He's wonderful.
Yeah, he is. And I just had no idea his career went that far back, and that his Tony was in the 90s. It's just amazing. Let's talk about the actor who played Benji. I just love this. His name's Zach Braff. How'd you like to be named Zach Braff? He was born and raised in New Jersey. He attended school with R&B artist Lauryn Hill. He grew up near actors Elizabeth and Andrew Shue. Broken Hearts Club was only his fourth film, and his prior film was a supporting role in Blue Moon with Rita Moreno. And Braff would shortly thereafter be cast in Fox's hospital comedy Scrubs from 2002 to 2010. And that was alongside Sarah Chalk. In 2004, he made his directorial debut with Garden State. In 2004, with Natalie Portman, Jim Parsons, and Gene Smart. That was about a quietly troubled young man who returns home for his mother's funeral after being estranged from his family for a decade. After Scrubs, he would continue to work in film and appeared in 4 of them over the next 5 years, including The Color of Time. Also, his most recent movie is the aforementioned Moonshot, in which a college student helps a barista sneak on board a space shuttle to Mars. How about that for a plot? To date, he's got 43 acting credits and 13 directing and producing credits.
So, Toppy, I'd like to dial it back only a moment to the last question you asked Amanda. The favorite character in the film. So, I've seen this a few times. I hadn't seen it in many years until recently. But I would have to say that if I had to pick favorite characters, I'm a little torn, but I feel bad for the newbie, the one who's just coming out, because I came out at 22, and at the time, I had one-way airfare to Dallas, Texas, where I was moving with my 18-year older boyfriend at the time. So I feel for that character because he's falling for the birthday boy, Dennis. And that moment when they're in the hospital, spoiler for anyone who hasn't seen it, Benji eventually overdoses and they're in the hospital. And there's a moment where Dennis is sitting in the hallway, and I'm forgetting newbie's name right now, but they have an exchange there, and Dennis basically tells him, "You were the wish," because the guy relit the candles on the birthday cake when it was revealed that the birthday boy didn't even get to blow out his own candles because his friend's love life was in a crisis. So that just it turned my allegiance there to the new kid, because he gets turned away from the sweetest guy in the story, and he's not given a chance. I was the newer kid at one point, and I actually have had the table turned too. I once dated a guy who is about 10 years my junior, trying to figure out what was it like to be the older guy, and of course that didn't work out, but so Dennis and the newbie were my favorites. What about you, Toppy?
Oh, I think Billy Porter was one. I liked the central character, the birthday boy, because it sort of he seems to be sort of the one that's pulling everyone together somehow or other. Um, so those are probably my two favorite. Oh, and by the way, the birthday boy, the Oliphant there, the actor he reminds me of is the dude who was on 6 Feet Under and the show where he's a
Peter something, right?
yeah, and the show where he's a murderer, the guy that what the hell is that called?
Yeah.
You're talking about Michael Anthony Hall?
Well,
because he was the gay brother on 6 Feet Under, and then he played Dexter.
Dexter. He reminds me of the guy in Dexter. Anyways, yeah, I thought the cast was kind of well rounded and they had a lot of interesting characters and in a sitcom-y sort of way. Because it was kind of written a little bit like a sitcom and the lines, and there's a lot of memorable lines.
It like the whole movie is that it's like, there's a group of friends, but like everybody fits like their little like trope. So it's that's why it feels very sitcom-y, where it's like everybody still has like the stereotype that they're sort of like that they're still embodying. But where it's just where again, see, now I can't remember Andrew Keegan's character's name either, where he like brings up, well, are you only friends because you're gay? And it's like, well, when you're a queer person and like you develop queer friends, it's like, yeah, I guess that is the reason that like we became friends, but then we stayed friends for other reasons. Because like now a lot of my gay friends, the reason that I'm friends with them is because we're all drag queens. But like, we stay friends because, we have lots of other things in common and we, talk about other stuff, but but we also all have also varying other interests. So like, it's relatable to, in a sense of being like, yeah, you do, if you're a person who has like a diverse group of friends, like everybody kind of still fits a weird trope of some kind. Again, stereotypes exist for a reason.
And I just looked it up. Andrew Keegan's character, the one that I liked, the newbie, was Kevin.
Kevin.
It's not the same actor, but it reminds me of the actor who was in American Pie.
Yes. So I mean, he's also of that same generation. Like another movie that Andrew Keegan was in, he played the bad guy in 10 Things I Hate About You with Julia Stiles and Heath Ledger. He plays the asshole kid in that one, which again is a fun, cute little film.
And of anything else we can mention about this movie for somebody who hasn't seen it, this is going to be really out there in left field. Speaking of the Broken Hearts Club and their penchant for playing, was it baseball or softball? I forget.
Softball.
So yeah, so like they say it's baseball, but it's like that. I mean, I know I did it when I worked at a mortgage company. Like we joined a quote baseball league, but it's softball. It's like under slow pitch. It's not like baseball.
So pitching it out into the left field here, if you see the Broken Hearts Club for no other reason, it's the fabulous hairstylist who does nothing but let them talk, and she is credited for being great with advice, and all she says is it's a gift, I guess. That's played by up-and-coming actress Jennifer Coolidge, who around this time I saw in a movie, what's his name, the guy that was at the Oscars this year that got slapped.
Chris Rock.
Yes, Chris Rock was in this movie about a rich white guy who dies, and he is basically inhabited by a black man.
Oh, I remember that. That came out a few years after this, but yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
But that was one of the first films I saw Miss Jennifer Coolidge in, and she always plays these trashy characters that are just gold, because her line in that movie is she like dresses all ghetto and she wants to get her husband's attention again, and he's like, what are you doing? Because she's like jazzercising. She's like, I'm backing at what up.
So I mean, she has just such an amazing, Jennifer Coolidge has just such an amazing career of like all of these small parts that people remember her from. Because like what made her famous was, again, a year before this movie, was her playing Stifler's mom in American Pie. And like that, and that, like, again, the entire term MILF is literally based around Jennifer Coolidge. And then of course, like a few years later with Legally Blonde, and that, but one of my favorite things that I've seen her in is Best in Show.
Oh yeah,
where she's like, we could just sit for hours and talk about soup, or just talk about nothing. She's so good in that movie. She's so good.
And of course, honorable mention going to John Mahoney from the cast of Frasier, who played Frasier's dad, and he was Jack, who ran the restaurant. And I mean, I kind of saw it coming, that spoiler, he was going to pass on.
Oh yeah.
There had to be an event, because all these types of movie has to have something that brings the friends together. Yes. Yeah. Now, of course, that could have very well just been Benji in the hospital, but they decided that it needed to be Jack. And if for no other reason that we learned that his partner of 20 some years, Purple Guy, considered himself just not good at talking to people.
Yeah. Well, so for in writing a movie sense, like, yeah, I'm sure if Benji would have died, it would have brought the friends together, but it would not have had the emotional impact to the audience. Like, Benji was still very like comedy relief character throughout the movie, whereas like Jack was definitely like sort of like the heart of that group, and like having him die, of course, is like a bigger loss for the group and bringing them together. So I like everyone in the movie. It is really funny. The actor who plays Patrick has never sort of become like a name, but he has appeared in several like State Farm, Geico, Allstate. Like, he's been in like a million different commercials, and every time I see him, I'm like, Patrick, I'm so glad you're still working. I'm so glad you're still working. Good for you. Like, good for you, sir. I'm just always so happy when I see him in something.
All right.
and also this is also one of the first movies that I remember seeing Justin Theroux in, who is also extremely hot. He plays Howie's pothead boyfriend, which is very, very random. But also Howie is also just a fun character. Like, everyone loves a super neurotic person. So the whole Jennifer Coolidge montage of everyone going to see her to get their haircut and venting, but Howie's actually in therapy. And when he literally he's like going on, he's like, my friends get a haircut with this. And it's like, girl, same. I wish I could be getting a haircut while getting therapy.
Right. Oh.
Well, the last thing I really want to know is when they're in the bathroom, they're doing drugs, and they're all sniffing chapstick. What the hell drug is that supposed to be?
So it's when I first saw it, I thought, because like the only thing I really knew at the time, I thought it was poppers, but I'm like, that's not poppers. Poppers don't do that. I think, and again, I am not, full disclosure, I am not somebody who does recreational drugs. They're just not something that I enjoy.
And I was just simply going to say, as somebody who's been to Utah, could you explain?
But I think it's GHB. I think it's done in a similar way.
Okay.
Because it's obviously they're not it, but or I mean, I don't. This is one of the movies now that I don't like watch anymore. It's on as I'm doing other things because I've seen it so many times. I would need to watch that scene again to see exactly what it is they're doing, because I mean, they could also be doing bumps of coke. They could also be doing like they could also be doing like because they're not doing Molly, because he does that earlier at the other party.
Well, it looks like they're all sticking chapstick up their nose and sniffing. Anyway. Oh goodness.
I mean, again, it could be a myriad of it. It could also literally be nothing, and they didn't get approval to like show them doing real drugs, so they made something up.
Well, I mean, let's be totally retro and nostalgic. It's video head cleaner.
Well, that's poppers.
Yeah, torrent poppers.
Well, so we have reached the top of the hour here, and we're standing out in the lobby. We're going to talk about other programs you might enjoy if you liked the Broken Hearts Club. And if you didn't actually see it or haven't seen it right now, or at least lately, you can find it on our favorite free service, Tubi, Tubi. So this is our snack tray, and I'll go first. I'm going to tell you about something else you might enjoy now. This film actually came out a handful of years before the Broken Hearts Club. I'm actually a little surprised I didn't see it when it came out at first, because I was in my first year of college then. In 97, this is a film with Seinfeld's Jason Alexander and John Glover, who was the bad guy in the second Gremlins movie. This is Love, Valor, Compassion, and it's about 8 gay men who gather for 3 summer weekends at a lakeside house in Dutchess County, New York, and that's the area that we call upstate. It's like along the Hudson near Albany, where they relax, reflect, and plan for survival in an era plagued by AIDS. So, Love, Valor, Compassion from 1997.
Well, that's a good choice. I'm gonna choose a movie. I'm pretty sure we did, DJ, but this reminded me so much of Jeffrey. With Patrick Stewart was in that movie, and there were. This was sort of an era where we'd had our super heavy, dark gay movies that were about AIDS and surviving AIDS and living with AIDS. And Jeffrey and this movie we're talking about tonight was kind of a new era where they really decided, well, we're not going to focus on that. We're just going to focus on a group of ordinary people who happen to be gay, and it's more about life, death, and love, and things like that. So that's kind of where this movie's coming from. In a way, it's not groundbreaking, but it was different from those heavy movies that we had for a long time. So I'm going to recommend Jeffrey, and also I just recommend, talk about a movie you could almost describe with the same description as tonight's movie, but Boys in the Band, which predates just about everything we've talked about tonight. It's a group of people gay friends who come together for a birthday party, and I think it's just really interesting to compare the movies. So I'd recommend Boys in the Band and Jeffrey.
Hey, and guess or lady of the hour, Demanda, you had some thoughts on this? Is there anything else you might recommend from this time period? Or
So Boys in the Band is one of my literal favorite movies of all time. The original and the remake that's currently on Netflix. Highly recommend both of those. But the kind of what Toppy was saying, there were so many movies in the 90s and the late 90s that really focused on, and they kind of mentioned that in this movie, where it's there weren't any movies without gay characters unless someone was dying of AIDS. It was the sacrificing lover of someone who was dying of AIDS, and then for a while in the late 90s, it was the token gay best friend. And so this whole, I said, the peak of white gay men cinema of the 2000s. One of the movies, the 3 movies that I first rented that were queer movies were Broken Hearts Club, Get Real, and Trick. So Trick is another movie more in this vein of comedy. So it's about Christian, the actor is Christian Campbell, who is Nev Campbell's brother. And I can't remember, and his name is Gabriel in the movie. And he starts flirting with a go-go boy. And they decide that they're gonna go hook up, but then just like string of events keep getting in the way. And so it's one of those movies that takes place in one night, and they keep going to all these different locations, and you can't tell whether or not like the go-go boy is like really into him, or if he's just like in it for like the trick of it. But two major things from that movie that I think need to be mentioned. Number one, a supporting character is played by Tori Spelling, who, I mean, she's Tori Spelling. We all know that she's Tori Spelling. But this movie, honestly, is probably the best acting role I've ever seen her in. She actually does an incredible job about being Christian Campbell's best friend. And then the icon. So this shirt, this look, aside from the hair, I didn't do the hair. I use Miss Coco Peru's iconic monologue from Trick that ends with, "You ever get cum in your eye, Gabriel? It burns." I use that in a number mixed in with Rufus Wainwright's Gay Messiah. And it is just like gay classic moment where she like literally locks herself and Gabriel in the bathroom to go off about this go-go dancer. And it is hilarious. It's kind of scary. It's kind of like this woman is insane. And Miss Coco Peru is just incredible. So if you have not seen it, I highly recommend Trick.
Nice. Well, Demanda, I wanted to tell you that the ever mysterious Cronehaven in the room tuned into YouTube, and she says you look gorgeous.
Oh, thank you so much. That is so sweet. Mwah.
And speaking of the people who are watching or listening live, because you can do that every first and third Friday of the month, we have with us live Billy Starsage, DJ Subby, the aforementioned Cronehaven. We have Lamont Cranston. We also have Tommy Hash Browns, our pal, and Myron Kurtz was also here. So thank you everyone for joining us live.
Okay. So before we say goodnight to everyone, Demanda, if you could let our listeners know where else they could find you if they're not local and they're not on your mailing list.
My mailing list. So please come follow me on social media. You can find me across social media: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Demanda Martini, DMANDAMARTINI. I post, so if you are local to the DC area, I post my in-person schedule, so that way people can come support the show, support your local drag. This Pride Month, I have a bunch of gigs. I'm doing a lot of story times. I'm doing a lot of live gigs. I'm about to start monthly shows at DC Vegan's Botanical Bar. And anyway, so I'm gonna be around. Please come find me. My next convention that you can come find me at, I just announced it today on my Instagram. I'm gonna be at FlameCon, which is hosted by Geeks Out, which is a queer comic book convention. It is in New York City in Times Square. I'm gonna be the booth babe for another amazing podcast that I follow, Cerebro Podcast, which is a crazy little fun queer retelling of characters from the X-Men.
Nice. You are one of the bestiest girls I know.
Woohoo! Round of applause for Our Lady of the Hour.
I try.
Well, we're really happy you were here during this very busy time for you to join us tonight for talk about this movie. And next time, folks, we're going to be doing one of my all-time favorite movies. It's a magical little movie from 1983. It's about an American oil company that has plans for a new refinery and send someone to Scotland to buy up an entire village. But things don't go as expected. It stars Burt Lancaster, Peter Riegert, and Fulton McKay. And it is a lovely, wonderful, sweet, magical movie called Local Hero. It's next time on Matinee Minutia.
Oh, and that's going to be on the first Friday of the coming month here, which will be July 1st, just before Independence Day weekend. So let me find my button on the screen here. Alrighty, Toppy. So if you would do us the honors, please say goodnight in the ways of the old days of radio.
Well, we just like to say goodnight, Gracie.
And where did I put that? Hang on, folks. Oh. Thank you for listening to Matinee Minutia.
Our show streams live on the first and third Friday of the month.
Go to univazpods.net, click the tower for streaming audio. Enter Discord for our chat room.
You can find our show anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Find us on Twitter at Matinee Minutia.
Find our group on Facebook.
Or visit our webpage at matineeminutia.com.
Have an idea for a show? Or why not let us know how we're doing?
Email us at matineeminutia@gmail.com.
Joe's Gone Wild with Matt and Tom.
Speak up.
The Smellcast by Toppy Smelling. Tastes like burning with Tim and James.
Unique voices in podcasting.
The Shy Life Podcast with me, Paul the Shy Yeti.
univazpods.net.
And for those of you hanging out on YouTube for a brief moment or two, we're going to listen to a little bit of the soundtrack of Broken Hearts Club, and you can catch us chair dancing for a moment or two. This is Miss Kim English in Learn to Love.
Take me back to my college days, going to clubs.
Had you found Amanda yet?
Me, had I found Amanda yet?
Yeah.
Oh, no. Amanda's
Demanda was another layer of the onion.
yeah.
I really couldn't find anything else from the soundtrack but this song.
So also another thing to kind of mention about the soundtrack is that a lot of it was Carpenter's cover. So that's interesting that they don't really exist.
Oh, you know, that's actually one of the things that I liked about Dennis was that he liked, you know, classic rock. Well, although I don't know that Carpenter's classifies as classic rock, but it's easy listening nowadays. And
just the fact that it's like you don't find the voice of Karen Carpenter slightly romantic. Oh, and also for years, me and my friends would call people like whatever guy, like J. Crew guy, purple guy.
well, and that, you know, that was kind of what's you know, made me like Kevin. It was like he's like just not even out of the closet, and that's what did they call that, his go-to feature or something? Is that
his obviously gay trait, OGT.
Yes, obviously gay trait.
And also when they mentioned the fact that they used to fold jeans together at Structure, I was like, oh, I miss Structure. I miss Structure.